Hey, thank you everyone for attending the first 2025 Unison webinar series on micro-credentials. My name is Bart Purcell. I'm the CEO here at Unison. And before we introduce Natalie and Chris and get into the discussion, I just want to give everyone a really quick overview of what Unison is and what we do, as we might be new to some folks. So Unison is a consortium of 16 institutions in the United States. We are about 10 years old. When Unison started 10 years ago, the goal of Unison was to make sure the academy maintained control of digital transformation, and that was specifically in aspects of course content, curriculum, and data. Our mission is pretty straightforward. We're here to help our members accelerate student success initiatives through data and affordability. We do that by what I call the 4 pillars of Unison. We have contracts with 13 EdTech solution providers. As a consortium, we represent almost 900,000 students, so we try and use that to our advantage to negotiate good contract pricing for our members. But maybe more importantly, as part of these contracts emerge, we also have aspects of data. So as our members, particularly students at our member institutions, use these EdTech solutions, many of our vendor partners send data back to our members through our Unison data platform. We also have teaching and learning communities of practice. We have about 8 of them. You can think about folks that are accessibility professionals, faculty development professionals, learning analytics professionals. They get together monthly, they share best practices, they do demonstrations of some of the projects they're working on, and some of them have some collaborative projects that span different schools across the consortium in those spaces. We also have something we call Engage. This is a digital content program that follows the inclusive access model that allows our students at our institutions to procure digital textbooks and digital courseware at reduced rates. In 2024, we estimated we saved students about $22 million in e-text and courseware purchases. Since the inception of this program in 2017, we estimate we've saved students about $127 million across the consortium. And last, we have a data platform, the Unison data platform. So this is data infrastructure that brings together data from a student information system, a learning management system, and up to 18 different EdTech solutions into a single infrastructure that allows our members to really get new insights into what's happening in that digital student learning journey in these different environments that our students are in these days. So now that you know a little bit about Unison, you might be wondering, why are we here talking about micro-credentials that may not slot into any of those 4 areas very cleanly? So in 2022, Unison's governed by a board, so all of our members have a seat at the Unison board, and a couple of our board members were very animate during a board meeting that, hey, if your institution is not worrying about micro-credentials now, you will be soon. So what we decided to do was to stand up a task force. Chris was a strong voice on that task force, and that task force ran from 2023 to 2024. It included 26 individuals across 12 Unison schools. I was a member of the task force. I found the conversations really compelling because it was a diverse group of folks. We had registrars, we had academic technologists, we had trainers, we had people that worked in extension offices. We had this really diverse group of people that all play significant roles in micro-credentialing programs. And the task force was really charged to do 3 things. Describe the high-level implementation models across Unison. I believe Natalie and Chris will share a little bit of that information of what's happening at Rutgers and Texas here shortly. Sharing resources across the consortium. As I'm sure everyone that's involved in micro-credentials knows, there are many different associations, just for example, that participate in different aspects of micro-credentialing. So there was a pooling of resources. And then finally, there was a question of what is Unison's role going forward to help support our members in micro-credentialing efforts. So at the end of that task force, a report was produced, which I will share with everyone after the meeting, along with the link to this recording in YouTube, so everyone will have access to that. So Chris was a very strong member of the task force. Chris Drue is the Associate Director of Teaching and Evaluation at Rutgers. And right when we delivered this task force report, it was about July of 2024, was right around the time that the University of Texas at Austin joined Unison. So Art Markman, I saw Art. Hi, Art. He's on the board, and he's the Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs at Austin there. And he said, hey, we're doing a lot of cool stuff here too. How can we share with the rest of the Unison community and beyond that what's going on here at the University of Texas at Austin in micro-credentialing? So the way we have this structured, Chris and Natalie have 3 broad sections that they'll share, different stories from Rutgers and Texas. That includes, number 1, strategies for coordinating micro-credentialing efforts. Number two, examples of some of the programs that are taking place at Rutgers in Texas. And last, lessons learned. And by all means, if you have questions, I'll be monitoring chat. We'll look for maybe some breaks in between sections to answer questions, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end as well. So Chris, I'm going to stop sharing and I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Bart. Let me get my share started. I'm going to share some slides for this first section here. Okay, well, hello, everyone. I'm Chris Drue. I am in our office for teaching, evaluation, and assessment research. And in that office, just one of my many roles is to help the university support our micro-credentialing programs. And so I'll tell you a little bit about what it looks like from that perspective as we talk about micro-credentials and digital badging at Rutgers. I wanted to start by giving you a little bit of context about who we are at Rutgers. We're one of the oldest institutions. We were founded in 1766, but mainly we are a very large and spread out institution. We have 4 chancellor-led units. These are very sort of independent areas in our university located in 3 sort of primary locations across the state of New Jersey. We are the State University in New Jersey. But we have 29 separate schools and a lot of folks here at Rutgers, 69,000 students and more than 8,000 faculty and 14,000 staff. So it's a large institution, and that means we have a lot of opportunities in different places we can explore with digital credentials. And as you'll see, we have a decentralized model for how those digital credentials are organized here at Rutgers. So I'm going to talk through the university-wide support, the centralized part of it, and then we'll get into that decentralized part of it as I explain to you how we've organized this. We have one badging software platform for all of Rutgers. We've purchased a license to Accredible, and that is hosted by our Office of Information Technology. Several years back, we used Credly for a few years, and we made a big switch after investigating all of the different platforms that we could find, and we decided on Accredible, and it's been working really well for us. As part of our central support, we've decided on one identity standard for all of the Rutgers badges or digital credentials. We do have certificates as well. And that helps make sure that everything looks similar and equivalent, and it helps us put it all into the Accredible system in a way that facilitates making everything look similar. We do also have a central website and a central steering committee. And into the chat, I'm going to post a couple of our links to our websites. We have a centralized website that has information for anyone at Rutgers who's interested in digital credentials. And part of that is a list of all the credentials we offer. So I'll come back to that when we get to that section. We talk about some different examples of programs. The Central Steering Committee, this is a group where all of the folks from our different chancellor-led units come together to talk about what's happening in micro-credentials in their area of the university. It is a way for us to understand how where we're making progress and where we may need additional support to help our units develop out those programs. And just on the bottom of the slide are some examples of what our badges look like. But even though we have that centralized support, we are very, I'd say, decentralized in how we have ran this. And I think that has some advantages, which we'll get to at the end. Our digital badges are developed, coordinated, and assessed locally by 7 different units. So we have 7 different organizations here at Rutgers which are able to create digital credentials for folks who are in those areas. So all 4 of those chancellor-led units that I mentioned, our Camden, New Brunswick, Newark campus, and our Rutgers Health, Rutgers Behavioral Health Services, all of these different units are issuing their own credentials, and they're approving those programs as they see fit. We also have 3 university-wide areas that approve credentials. Our academic affairs, which is my area, continuing studies is a big player in the credential field, as well as our university libraries. So each of these areas develops their own approval and coordination process. Each of these areas, has an application process, and they meet to approve new credentials, and they set those up in our Accredible system for us. I said we have a centralized digital badge visual identity, so we have decided that badges should look a certain way. And one of the things that we've done is we have different shapes for different types of digital credentials. So you can see there's kind of a shield looking shape. Those are for our academic programs, credentials that are associated with academic programs. What is it, a hexagon, I guess, is our professional development. We have a circle for the student life, and then our standalone badges are in a square. And you can see, we have different rules for what the branding should look like, the program name, the subject, etc. We have actually changed our branding in the last couple of years, so it's no longer, these Rutgers ones are being replaced with the R model. That's our new preferred visual identity, so those ones are a little bit outdated at this point. But this helps us be very clear. You can look at a badge really quickly and decide, oh, yeah, that one's associated with an academic program, and we can really clearly just see whether it's academic or whether it might be a student life program. And really quickly, we also do digital certificates through our Credible system. So some of our programs decide they want a digital certificate. They're not that interested in having those digital badges as their micro-credentials. And we consider these digital certificates another micro-credential. And we have a visual identity for that that's also been approved by our communications office. And to sort of summarize this, how this has been working for us, we have in our Credible system, the system we're using now, we've issued just about 35,000 micro-credentials in 275 different programs. 6 of those credential issuing units you can see on the right-hand side. 6 of them are very active in this. Our main campus, Rutgers University, New Brunswick, is where the majority of those digital credentials have been issued, but you can also see that our continuing studies is our second most frequent micro-credential issuing unit, and really everyone is getting into the action here. And I'm going to turn it over to Natalie to talk about her program, but then we'll talk more about some of the examples that we have.
Thanks so much, Chris. It's so exciting to see your examples and how you're structuring things. And I think what everybody will see is that there's a lot that's similar, but a lot that's different as well. So let me share my screen. Okay, thank you all. Let me know if you have challenges seeing anything that I'm sharing. Okay, I'm Natalie Murray. I am a postdoctoral fellow here at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm part of the academic affairs portfolio and our mission around improving the academic mission, and I am part of the registrar's office. 2 leaders from the team is here. Our executive vice provost, Art Markman, is here, as well as Brenda Schumann, our registrar. And this work could not continue without them, or even start without them. And in my position as a postdoctoral fellow, I have the pleasure of helping coordinate and administer the digital badging program, which I'll speak to, as well as hold some research questions or some ideas. So it's a fantastic role for me, and really exciting to be part of this community. I'd like to start again as well a little bit about UT Austin. You may be familiar with Austin, UT Austin, from football or college football or Longhorns or a specific shade of burnt orange. But we have a lot of really incredible things that happen here on campus. We are R1 institution with over 53,000 students and a wide variety of undergraduate and graduate programs, over 12,000 courses. We are separated into 19 colleges and schools, and I'll be speaking to, if I use the acronym CSU, I mean College, School, and Unit, which is the group that we're serving. We also have a wide variety of different student populations that we are serving quite well and supporting in their academic journey. And then I wanted to call out, we're part of the UT system, and we're one institution in that overarching system. We are primarily a residential on-campus experience, but highly digital. Anywhere you go on this campus, you see students engaging with digital in the digital learning. So I'd like to start by giving some context to our use cases of our digital badges, and really what we're trying to recognize those valuable skills and abilities of students or learners faculty, staff with a digital badge. And so our digital badges, our digital credentials are coming about in several different ways. One is that they are embedded in academic courses. This is when a faculty member or a group of faculty members or a department decides to embed these digital credentials within an existing academic course. They can also be used for co-curricular or extracurricular programs to recognize the learning and contribution of those experiences. We have several examples of faculty and staff development with digital credentials, and then maybe a more wide-reaching use case, which is in our continuing professional education digital credentials. And so our framework and everything I'm going to be speaking to today is absolutely applicable to all of those use cases. And it's quite exciting to see the unification of academics and continuing professional ed. I thought I would share a little bit of a journey of where we've been and how we got to where we're going. And just starting in 2021, way before my time here, but leaders across campus were meeting, and there seemed to be this groundswell around digital badging. And instead of procuring individual badging platforms, it was really a good opportunity of bringing everyone together with this interest. We also had a lot of support from the provost's office, and there was because of the organization of academic affairs, we had academics and continuing your professional education together. And it really has been an ethos of our approach to keep everyone working together and sharing. From there, we moved into this task force, and the task force focused on developing a framework and governance. And that is when we decided on Badger at the time, which is now Canvas Credentials, and that was procured, and that is our platform for today. Our first digital badge was created in March of 22, so just over 3 years ago. And our first use cases were really recognizing learning that was already happening. From there, we moved into a community practice. I'll speak to more of that in a moment, but also allocating resources and actually making this thing we were doing somebody's job. From there, we've grown. We have the number of badges, the number of issuers, the number of earners. One thing that's different than the example that Chris was highlighting was we are actually increasing our number of issuers because we have college and schools that are coming on board, but also individual units such as Texas Research or our research arm for a university, our Dean of Students, and other groups that are coming in to contribute. So we have 23 issuers. We have 244 digital badges that are active at the moment. And we have just over 10,000 digital credentials issued to date. And then just last August, we moved to the initiative in its pilot phase, kind of grew up and moved into the registrar's office so that we could work directly within the registrar's context. And we were looking towards kind of our academic policy and understanding where our badge data needs to live within our student record or learner record. And then we're also embarking on a comprehensive learner record. From here, I'm just going to share a few of the overarching strategies that are really important as we are organizing across large institutions. And first, recognizing the learner need from a digital credentials standpoint. So one of the things we ask ourselves is, what is going to benefit the student or what's going to benefit the learner as they are making their next step? It might be also based on, a student who's in a degree program, what's going to enhance or help them articulate their skills. And that was one thing that we recognized is our students really needed support in telling their story and giving examples of what they can do. And digital credentials is a great way of doing that. The second strategy is bringing everyone to the table, ensuring that you have everyone who might be a stakeholder in digital credentials that they are part of this conversation. And I know there's a bit of this language around the non-students, the non-degree, the non-credit. And I completely understand that approach. However, in the long run, you really do need everyone working together from an academic perspective, from an executive and continuing professional education perspective. So bringing everyone together at the table to really help you work through all the challenges, which brings me to my third point, which is a flexible framework. Our framework allows for those 4 use cases, and it is not a one size fits all, which turns into a one size fits none. And we have 3 different badge levels: foundation, milestone, and terminal. And I'll show some pathways in a moment. We also have 2 different types of digital badges. One is a competency badge, in which a competency is assessed, and we look at those learning outcomes, the assessment, and the rubrics associated with them. And the other is a completion badge, which allows to recognize just completion of a learning experience. And those have some minimum standards with them. So that's one way that our framework has been really advantageous for us. Just quickly, our governance process is a 2-step governance. Again, it really needs to fit the organization, because we are a decentralized institution, very much like Rutgers, we are looking to our issuers, those college schools and units, to identify a badging rep and a badging contact, and also to have an internal approval process that they are moving through. And so those are critical parts of this. Once something has been approved at the issuer level, then it comes to a central badge review board for us to ensure that it's meeting our requirements. And I've found that this process has been quite smooth, and approvals, and we can move very fast. We want to be very agile and flexible to meet those use cases. Resources and support. We do have a mostly centrally funded, I would say the vast majority essentially funded, with our Canvas credentials platform, with my role, with executive leadership and oversight. We have our website, as well as a very robust SharePoint site that allows us to really help everyone, provide a lot of resources. And then we actually have a digital badge for anyone who's interested in offering a micro-credential through UT Austin, and it allows them to go through the course and go through the experience and actually be issued a badge. It's our Badging Quick Start, and we have another course, Understanding Digital Badges. And then last but not least is that we have a robust community of practice that is open to any faculty or staff. We meet monthly. We often are celebrating one of our issuers and their experiences, as well as tackling some of the challenges that the teams have or questions. It's meant to really, really reinforce that community, as well as provide that creative, innovative experience for everyone to see what you're all doing. So with that, I think Chris is going to start with some examples, and I'm going to stop share.
And as Chris is pulling up his screen, again, if you have questions, feel free to send them to me privately in chat, or just put them in chat, and we should have some time at the end that we can ask Natalie and Chris a few questions.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Natalie. You just reminded me about the positions. You said you've created positions. You know, I know that you're responsible, you're working in this area. That's maybe one of the differences. We haven't created any new positions yet that are focused on this. Instead, we've sort of, because we've divided it up between all these 7 units, we really kind of just added a little bit to everyone's job along the way to try to manage it that way. And so far, we are able to manage that difference. So like I said, we have 275 different programs. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about some of those programs that I think are representative and interesting and notable in terms of what we've created. So I wanted to start with this one. This is actually our most popular credential in terms of how many people have earned this. This is our online learning skills that our Learning Center rolled out. This is one of the very first digital credentials that what became really widespread. If you can guess when this came out, it was in 2020, and this is one of those credentials that is often associated with a course. So it is something that the Learning Center developed a Canvas module to teach how to take an online class, how to study appropriately. And they allowed instructors to put this module in their course as an assignment. And they've just made it very easy. All the instructor had to do is download that module, put it into Canvas, and then it was a low stakes few points in a Canvas course. I put this in my course for a few years. It was a time when we really wanted students to get these skills. We have our Learning Center has issued more than 10,000 of these particular credentials, and they've got a few other programs that are also somewhat popular as well. So that is one model for how credentials can become really widespread when you have an office like a Learning Center who's saying, let's all share this. You're welcome to it. You can take this program and use it for your purposes, and they're offering that to faculty. So that is our most popular credential that I wanted to start with. I'll transition now to one that is maybe not as popular, but I think probably really, really useful. This is the Clinical Research Coordination digital credential. And this is one of our schools of health professions has designed this program, and they've issued it to about 60 different students who've gone through their program. So it's not a requirement of a course. It is a separate standalone credential that a student can earn, but it is linked very, very directly to a career path for students who are going through. They're taking courses that are related to being a research coordinator, and suddenly they can get this digital credential. This program does charge a small nominal fee, and the reason they do charge that fee is because that actually encourages students who sign up to actually complete it and get that credential. The students feel like they've invested in this, and so they pay the $25 to get this credential, or to be enrolled in the program to potentially earn this credential. And they've issued this to about 60 students, and they have a registry so you can find out who has earned this particular credential. And there are many people who are in our area who, at least in past years, who've been hiring research coordinators, and they can go and look at this list and find out who is credentialed to do that. So it's a professional development badge, but it's associated with a program, and it really does, I think, help our students. Next, I wanted to show you a very new credential series that one of our units has launched. And this is an example of a pathway. So you can see that there are 3 credentials on the left-hand side: networking, interviewing, and personal branding. And as students might complete these credentials, once they've completed all 3, then they earn the Career Development Mastery credential. And that shows that they've completed this pathway, they've earned all of the prerequisites, and that should help them out in their future degrees or their future careers. So this program has just started. They've just begun issuing these, but I think this really represents maybe a future that a lot of our units want to go in terms of linking different skills that students will learn into a pathway, so that the students are encouraged not just to dabble and grab one, but maybe to actually go through that pathway, complete all of those skills so that they can earn that mastery credential. So I focused a bit on the students, excuse me, and now I want to think about our faculty and staff, because that is also another really popular area for our digital credentials. Sitting in our academic affairs office, this is mostly what I work with, are credentials that are coming in, proposals to do credentials from our Office for Research or from our IT office. They want to train people to do specific tasks. Our global office might be interested in training people to process the paperwork for hiring international scholars, for instance. We have a proliferation of these types of programs as well. This is one that one of our teaching centers has implemented. You can see this one is related to AI. Our new teaching center director, Tracy Addy, developed this program where faculty can sign up to to take some workshops that are focused on the foundational knowledge around teaching with generative AI. They earn that credential, and then they have a choice, or maybe it's not a choice here. I think they earn the intermediate badge and then the advanced badge, and these are where faculty are actually making changes to their courses, implementing some of the things they've learned. And once they do that, then they can finally achieve that sort of advanced or the final step in that pathway. So we've seen a lot of faculty as well going through these types of credentialing programs. I've found that our lecturers and our teaching faculty are particularly interested in earning these credentials because they're looking for ways to show their commitment to our institution. And so these ways, you know, are something they can put in their teaching portfolio. It's a way that they can show that they've committed to learning something about their teaching or about their instructional role or about their staff role at the institution. So those are some examples, and I think they fit nicely into the examples that Natalie shared. You know, some of these are embedded in courses, some of these are professional development for students, some of these are faculty and staff development. So Natalie, what are your...
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to share a couple of examples and appreciate this.
Natalie, as you're pulling up the slide, just a couple quick questions for Chris from the audience. How many of the online learning credentials were awarded? Did you say 10,000? Was that the number there?
Actually, 11,041.
Okay, 11,041. One more question. Is it possible for pathways that you showed us to be established across academic departments?
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussion. What happens when someone wants to issue a credential that is across different units, across those academic departments? Yes, we make that possible. And however, we really do request that there's one office that is in charge of a digital credential, because there's a lot of work required just to ensure that you are issuing it to people, that you are assessing the results of how it's going. And so as long as there's someone who's willing to be the main gatekeeper for that particular credential, it does tend to work. And we do, since we have those 7 units, we do want it to be approved by one of those units. You know, they can talk about who wants to be the approver and who wants to be responsible for that program, but needs to be someone in charge.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So Natalie, why don't you go ahead and share some examples from Texas. And Chris, there are a couple more questions in the chat. If you happen to have a second to pop in there and take a look, that'd be great. Thanks.
Well, thanks so much. I'm going to highlight a couple of examples across different issuers. Or College of Education has this Texas Educator mental health training. So this is to help individual students who are going through their licensing credentials to be a teacher, a K-12 teacher in Texas. There are certain requirements for that they must complete that are actually not part of coursework. And so the college identified the ability to provide this training to assess their learning, as well as issue these digital credentials. And so students are earning these as they go on to be a teacher here in Texas, which is quite exciting. And this is a very robust badge. I've included some numbers on the awarding here in a couple of cases. We also have an issuer around our Moody College of Communications, and this is an incredibly helpful badge for those students who are going into advertising and PR. Through our Nelson Center, they identified that students needed to consistently have data analytics skills, and there is a great course associated with those skills, but students weren't necessarily really getting all the learning that they needed or developing all the skills that they needed and needed to also articulate those skills. So this is an embedded digital credential within an academic course. Students can, I love this, they can complete the course. They could actually get a pretty good grade on the course without earning the digital badge. If they score high enough on the earning criteria, then they are awarded the digital badge. And guess what? Most of them do. It's a good motivator for excellence. And this has been a fantastic program. The faculty member there in Moody has actually developed additional digital credentials to help support his students. and in advertising and PR. We also recognize that students in our College of Natural Sciences needed some support around biotech lab skills. So they're developing these skills in academic courses, but there was still a gap for some students between the academic experience and the industry or research lab experience that they needed and were going towards. And so we have a May term that's coming up this May for a third year, but we have embedded biotech lab skills. This is largely a competency-based approach to developing these skills. Students take a very personalized approach. There's actually 3 pathways associated with this. And it's really, really cool for students to demonstrate these skills. I'll talk a tiny bit about the data in just a moment. And then quickly 2 more. School of Nursing has the Nursing Educator series, and this is faculty members who are teaching this Nursing Educator program, and they recognize skill development. Again, this is embedded in an academic course where students are demonstrating these skills. They can pass the course without actually getting these digital badges, but we're finding that because of this motivator of excellence and recognizing the skills at that level, that they're doing more. And then finally, as a continuing professional education example, our McCombs School of Business has Texas Executive Education, and they offer a continuing professional development program in cybersecurity. There are several badges in this pathway that you can see here. And this is something that is completely outside of the academic realm, but is quite a robust program of recognizing those skills. And these learners, of course, are doing what we hope all of our badge earners do, is share on LinkedIn, share on their resume, and also have that certificate if they need to submit anything for their employer. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and before we go on to lessons learned.
And Chris, I saw answered a couple of questions. Thanks, Chris. But I wanted Natalie ask the same question to you. Chris indicated that a credible can connect to places like LinkedIn, where can what you use, Credly or Badger? I'm sorry, I can't remember.
Yeah, we use Canvas Credentials, which was formerly Badger. Always have to say both right now because of that infrastructure. And yes, when someone earns a digital badge, there's a verifiable link, and that link can be shared very nicely on their resume. It can be shared on a portfolio or on LinkedIn, social networks such as LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay, so our last section, we wanted to talk about some of the lessons that we've learned, and I'm not going to share a screen here because I just want to tell you about some of the lessons that we really have learned at Rutgers through this. The first lesson that I think is really important is that this shift to micro-credentialing, we've really realized this is not really fundamentally new, I don't think, in terms of what we've been doing. Units have long been printing certificates out for their students for completing various programs. My unit has printed certificates for faculty for attending things or for presenting at different sessions. We've done the certificates with no oversight or any view of what's going on at the university for, I'm sure, decades and decades, right? And so if someone were to ask us, 6 or 7 years ago, how many certificates have been printed at Rutgers, we would have to say we have no idea how many certificates were printed in the last 10 years, in the last year, in the last month. We really didn't know any of that information. And now we have a system that actually helps us keep track of that. And so we can actually say how many of these digital credentials are now being offered, and we can track them, and we have a contact, we know who's issuing them, and we can ask them for data on how well those programs are doing. So this is, I think, a rationalization of something that's been going on for a long time. It has allowed those units who are printing them to save time and energy in terms of actually creating certificates, putting them in the mail. I remember at one point I walked down and knocked on faculty doors to hand them framed certificates for a program, right? All of that work is now happening through a click of a button where we say issue the certificate, and next thing we know, that faculty member has shared it on LinkedIn. So we have rationalized the process, and that wasn't something that was immediately clear to me, is that this is now a way that we can make statements, say, to our accreditors about how many credentials are issued, about how we are evaluating and assessing them. Which leads me to this question of assessment. I work in an assessment office, and it's important to me that everything that we do at Rutgers is assessed when we are teaching, when we are saying that students have earned a skill, that they have learned that skill, and we're giving them a credential for that. We should have a way to monitor whether, is our instruction really effective? Are those students, do they really have that skill at the end? And are there ways that we could improve that program moving forward to either make it more widely available, or to make sure that those students and the participants are actually doing a better job at getting at learning this material? And so, so we need to be ready. At this point, I don't think our accreditors are asking for that information, but this is potentially a thing in the future, in the next few years, where accreditors might start saying, tell us about your digital credentials. How do you know that they are effective? And so in our process, we have each of our approval committees, they do ask for a periodic assessment plan. And so, so that's important. We think that whoever is organizing this should make some commitment to assess how effective they are, and also how well the students are learning these skills. So assessment is really important. Another lesson that we've learned from this is that not every school, not every department is excited about micro-credentials. That's why we have the decentralized offerings. That's why we have 7 different approval bodies that make up the rules for how it's going to work. And that has really sped this process up. If we had to get everyone to have universal support for these micro-credentials, we would have never launched this 5 years ago when we did. There are some areas where the faculty are just not interested in this approach to education. And that's okay. That is their prerogative to decide how they want to run their departments, how they want to issue credentials to their students. If they want to focus on 4-credit credentials that are regular certificates, for instance, that is fine. By decentralizing it and allowing different units to make choices, we were able to have the units that were excited to get started, like say our Department of Continuing Studies. They were really excited to launch into this, and they did quickly, and they were able to do that without, say, having to wait for all of the faculty in, say, the Department of Anthropology to agree that this is a good idea. So the decentralization has helped, and eventually nearly all of our areas have kind of, I think, reached some consensus over the years about how they want to move forward. One of our credential issuing units did decide that they wanted to only do certificates. They weren't interested in the digital badges. They were going to do digital certificates, and they've moved forward in that way. And now they have, 50+ digital certificates. But it took a long time to reach that consensus. So decentralization has some of those advantages. And the last thing I wanted to say before we turn it over to Natalie is that there are still ongoing conversations. So it's been a lot of years in this. We've all learned a lot about it, but we are still coming together in our steering committee to talk about big questions. One of them is, what merits a digital credential in the first place, right? Is it just anything? Can you get one just for participating, right? Or do you have to actually learn a skill? I think that we've settled on the idea that it should be something that's resume worthy. I think most of our units have decided that if you wouldn't put it on your resume, we shouldn't be issuing you a digital credential for this. But there are still some, say, student organized things like the dance marathon badge, where it might not be resume worthy, but we're allowing the student groups to decide how they want to move forward with their credentials. And we have enough flexibility built into that system to make that possible. So those are some of the lessons that we've learned over several years of grappling with this new improvement in education.
Chris,
Yeah.
I'm just going to build on what you have said and could, make check marks next to each. We also have a wide variety of efforts to support our community and executive programs. Almost every college and school has some sort of executive development and have been issuing certificates. I can only imagine the number of certificates that have been issued through the years. So that's very much a similar part of us, and using digital credentials to recognize those learning in a little bit different way, as well as providing the learner the ability to share in with high efficacy. So I want to key on a couple of things in addition to what you shared. One is to be willing to operate in the gray. Our registrar says this, and I think it is so important to be able to operate within ambiguity. There may be these large questions that you're holding, and one of the challenges that I see some groups at our institution doing is that they try to design some big, perfect thing, and they spend years doing it. So instead, starting with something and trying to move forward when you don't have all the answers, just to test and learn and try. And through that process, you can learn a few things and then make some changes. The beauty of digital credentials is that you can stop doing it. It's not something that has to exist forever. So really, being willing to operate in the gray where you don't have academic policy or you don't have all the answers about what is enough, or who might use this and how, is really important. Another piece of this is the orientation, and a challenge that I see again and again is the orientation away from our learning context mindset or a course mindset or a workshop mindset towards what is going to be helpful for the badge earner to basically put out into the world, and for the employer to then consume. And so our language on our badge descriptions, our language on our earning criteria or the skills really needs to be oriented towards that badge earner and to the employer verifying the skill. I think that's a really important shift as we are embarking on this. We're kind of making that next level connection. I mentioned it before, but I cannot stress it enough to have everyone at the table with academics and continuing professional education. Chris, you mentioned this as well, is that there's a space for everyone. And while different groups are making decisions about how they want to move forward or if they want to move forward, others can proceed as they're working together. The last thing that I'll mention is, recognizing that there is this impact on the badge earner and wanting to understand. I think it's part of that evaluation and assessment side. We did some work with our students who are going through the biotech lab skills and through their experience. And what we saw from a pre-term survey to a post-term survey was that students actually valued their skills more after they went through this process of really focusing on their skill development and earning these digital credentials. So they valued their skills more and they felt more confident. And these are students who had been through academic lab experiences and had definitely been exposed to this, but this concentrated focus on these particular skills and the recognition, they had a hard-earned recognition of the skills, really impacted their self-efficacy. And so I'm confident that those students are then able to articulate their skills as well as know that they're valuable to employers. I could go on and on about lessons learned, but I want to make sure that there's time for questions. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, Chris. So we do have a couple questions and we have some time, which is perfect. So one of the questions here is about commitment to the earner in terms of how long do you maintain the badge, right? So maybe this has both a technology component, right? I'm assuming you haven't signed 25-year contracts with the platforms, right? So there's a technology component, but then there's also probably a registrar records keeping component. So I'm just curious if you can speak to one or both of those. So how long are you sort of ensuring the earners that you'll have some kind of record that they can use, right, for their advancement?
I can quickly tackle that one. One of the things that we've been in conversations about that we are thinking about still, but we have not made any progress on, is developing a comprehensive learner record where we will have a location where we can store this type of credential information that maybe our registrar is keeping track for us. This is something that's important to us, but we don't yet know the solution there. In terms of the credible system, we've been promised that the data that we have in the system is ours, and that if we decide to transition away from this system in the future, we will still have access to all this data. They will still maintain any records that have been delivered to our students. And that's the case from our previous system, which you can still go in and click on those digital credentials that people earned back when we were still piloting a previous system, many years ago. But that is, I think, one of the big, million-dollar questions with this is how will we, maybe institutionalize this a little bit more so we don't have to, hopefully at some point in the future, we won't have the issue where some company goes under and then we have to figure out a way to display or to maintain these in the future.
Yeah, I would just echo that really we're right now depending upon the technology companies to continue to support those digital badges into the future. We do have some that have expiration dates, so that's an important call out, is that we do have, some of those. Really, digital credentials are meant to help someone get to the next step, maybe not the next 20 years, but how does it help them in the next 2-3 years to make that next step. And the other piece is that, yes, I mean, that's part of our work, and the movement into the registrar's office is to understand how this data becomes part of learner record in the broad sense. So that's, that's a question we're holding, and that's where we're operating in the gray. Yeah.
Yeah, great. A couple more questions. And I hear this one a lot, so I'm curious how you're wrestling with this. Understanding employees' perceptions, right, of the value of students that come into their offices looking for jobs with credentials. What have you heard from employers and how they perceive micro-credentials?
Natalie, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah. Absolutely. So from our biotech program, where those students were earning those digital credentials, we had a tight tie-in for students who were then going on to be either it was an internship in a research lab or at an employer, or it was an actual employment. And so we are getting some, beautiful stories that are coming back about the employers saying, yes, this is absolutely, we're seeing the skills in these students and recognizing the value of this digital credential. So we're getting very good early data. It is tricky to tease out the impact of the digital credential and in the context of the undergraduate or graduate degree. And so I think this is a very important area for us to work within. From everything that I've heard from the employer side is that they're also still grappling with how do they move to skills-based hiring and recognizing the value of micro-credentials. Anytime we're building someone's confidence and they're able to articulate and demonstrate what they've done and how they know, I believe that we are having some impact in that arena. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. This is tricky to discern, especially since many of these programs are very new. They're just launching. We're just getting off the ground. Some of the programs I showed you have only issued 9 or 10 credentials at this point. So a lot of it is very new, and it is something that we are certainly looking into. I think at this stage, it would certainly be true that in some fields, such as in healthcare or in IT, computer science, perhaps, some of these fields, employers are already tuned in to the value of these digital credentials. And I think we could probably find some of that evidence if we did a survey like that someone suggested here. But a lot of what we are doing is very new, and we are just, for the first time, the Learning Center is offering a bunch of credentials. Different departments that have never done this before, in the social sciences, are trying to develop credentials and things like how to use Excel. And I don't think that the employers are necessarily caught up with the fact that we are now offering these types of things, because most institutions are just starting this and just developing this, if at all. And so I see this as a definite research line for the future of just how effective are these new types of credentials in terms of actually helping getting our students jobs, whether employers are looking at them. We are working with our vendor to do some additional research on this. We're pushing them to do more research on it. And hopefully if we come back in 5 years, we'll have something more to tell you about, but I don't at this point have any of those answers.
Yeah, can we make a plug for Unison to help us out, which is one of the things that I don't know on the data side about our digital credentials is how often is a digital credential being verified. And so if someone shares that link and they put it on their resume or put it on LinkedIn, how often is someone coming back and actually looking at the metadata and the context that is a part of that digital credential? And can we track some of that? So yes, there's some things, there's a lot of work to do, but if we can advocate for our ed tech companies to implement some, really robust data analytics, which I'm confident they are able to do, that would be very helpful for us as we are understanding the dynamics of the programs. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good idea. That is something that came out of the task force, the Unison task force, and the recommendations for Unison is there a way, and maybe the comprehensive learning record becomes that way, to store data in a central repository that looks the same no matter what technology, it was created and issued in, and those kind of things to persist. So I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions. I appreciate everyone's time here. Let's give Natalie and Chris a round of virtual applause. Thank you both for spending some time with us today. It's greatly appreciated. And we will be sending out probably next week an email to everyone here with a link to the video once we have the video up on our YouTube channel, as well as the task force report that I mentioned earlier. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's stop recording.